Welcome back to What Arty Noobs with General Disturbance. We've got a bit of a treat for you today because we've had a replay submitted to us of a tank that we've not seen before, and which I don't think many other sites have seen either. What you're looking at is a Pz Kpfw KW 1-R. Now that is a captured tank, a Butte Panzer that was captured from the Russians. A KV-1 with the German markings on it, yes! With the Knight's Cross or the Ritzerkreuz, I think it's not Ritzerkreuz, but the German iron shield marking the side of the vehicle. Now it is a bit of an unusual beast because it's got certain modifications which the Germans made to it. They put a big cupola on top of the thing, and they also changed the gun and the gun magnets. It's a 75mm KW 40, which they've taken out of a Pz Kpfw Aslains and mounted that in. So it's got 110 alpha and it's got 115mm of pen, and that tank's gone down. That's the enemy 14 TP. It's also got quite a higher muzzle velocity than the standard this 5 gun, which is the 76mm, which you'll find on most KV-1s, or at least you would at the start of the Second World War. Now how this came about is the Germans actually captured a number of KV-1s off the Russians right at the start of the war, and the High Command asked them to put these tanks into operation, so they obviously took them to one side and started modifying them. Now one of the modifications they actually put was they put extra applique armour where the driver's port is and the machine gun. You can see that 13mm of extra armour there. Of course the cupola's a new thing. It's got a different radio as well, and of course the gun. And the gun actually gives it 10 degrees of gun depression, whereas your normal KV-1 only has 5 degrees, so it's a lot less. In fact, I think it's at 5 degrees or 6 degrees, but it's certainly less than 10 degrees. That's a nice hit on the M8A1, and again, and I'm not sure if he got that one in. No. Anyway, it's quite an interesting tank. It's got a 3.72 second reload time by the book, which is actually quite fast, so it can generate quite a lot of damage on the enemy, much better than standard KV-1, and got better armour than a KV-1 as well. And I think that, I don't understand why they called it KW-1, but I suppose that's just the Germans changing the designation for their own purposes. Well, now we're going to see him up against the KV-1 SA, another tank which we've been seeing today, the auto reloader. Now, the 75mm gun should have no trouble going through the front of that. Yep, gets the pen there, go for it again, and there's the kill. So he's got his first kill. There's a number of enemy tanks down on the beach, but I think that Bublus is more interested in getting to the enemy cap area. He's watching those guys up near the bowl. There's a number of tanks around. He's spinning around to get a good idea of where the enemy is. And that's a good target. Well, he hit the SU-2 122, but he didn't get the kill. That actually went to the Panzer Achtungsgleise Arts. Okay, but he has got that M8A1, the same one he fired at earlier. He's very badly damaged now. He's going to try and take that guy out because there's not many places he can run now. He just either goes down to the cliff edge. There he is. And one round in. Oh, he's taking a lot of damage from behind. It looks like the KV-1 SA was unloading into his rear. Yeah, and he's lost, well, 2/3 of his hit points now. Puts one into the KV-1 SA. And another one. That guy's still reloading, and that's why he's not responding. because he's dumped all his shells rather inconveniently, and he's got just one round left, and there you go. Now, it does help as well that Bublus is using a lot of premium ammo, and that's going to make it easier for him to pin the enemy. But you can see straight away that this tank is a completely different beast to a KV1. In the right hands, it's very powerful indeed. Of course, it should be known that the Germans did actually come across KV1s, the Clipchamp KW tank, way back in the Winter War. They were up against Finland, and of course Finland was being supplied with material by Germans, and so they did actually come across this tank and they saw it, but it wasn't available to them because it was a design from, I think, 1939, 1940, which the Germans didn't see when they were sharing information on tanks with the Russians, or the Soviets as they were back then, quite freely. And that was before the war. Uh-oh. That's his opposite number. He takes care of the M5 Stuart, and that gives him his 5th kill. He's now on for his top gun if he can get the next one. Unfortunately, he just got tracked. He burned his repair kit to fall back. Oh, and yes. I think you can see how powerful this tank actually is, even when it's in the hands of the enemy. Yeah, he's just got taken down by one of his own kind. Anyway, it's an interesting tank, and I think a lot of players are going to be trying this thing out and seeing what they can do on ridgelines, because unlike KV1s, this thing can actually fight on a ridgeline quite devastatingly. And there goes the T-67. There's only one enemy left. It's the enemy Pz KW. Oh, and he's up against an Su-2 122. And that guy gets him. So, reasonably good battle there by Bublus. His first in this tank. Well, this was more than just a good first battle. It was an excellent first battle because he actually got his first ace tanker in this tank on his first game. Yes, it shows that the player has the skill, not the tank. In this one, he managed to get a fighter effect for doing more damage than hit points to his own vehicle, a fighter badge for getting at least 4 kills. He ended up with 5, just one short of getting a top gun and 1/3 of the enemy team. He got a sharpshooter for taking 10 or more consecutive shots on the enemy, as well as a master gunner for getting 5 armor penetrating shots in a row, a duelist for taking down 2 tanks who damaged him, a bruiser medal for getting at least 5 critical hits. In fact, he got 7. And he got a high caliber for dealing the most damage in the game, and a Confederate as well for hitting more enemy than anyone else on his team. At least 6 tanks subsequently taken out by other teammates. Let's have a look at team score. Well, we can see the Bublus managed to get 2,587 hit points, easily got the high caliber. The next highest scorer only had 1,356, and that was their T-67, followed by the KV-1 SA, who managed 1,085. When it came to kills, yep, he's got that one too, because he got 5 kills in this game. 4 kills went to the M8A1 on his own team, and then 3 kills to these 2 tanks, which I think were also new tanks to the game. They might actually have been Pz KW1s, as far as I'm aware, but they're not logged into what record yet, so that's why we don't have the identity or the picture and also the name of the vehicle. But since Bublus also has those same characteristics, I think they were the same. And when it came to base XP, yep, Bublus has got that as well. So he's got the top in all 3 columns. 1,359 went to Bublus, 614 went to the KV-1 SA on the enemy team, and their M8A1 actually managed to get 546. He fired 31 rounds, got 28 direct hits on the enemy and 26 penetrations, which is good accuracy. 2,587 hit points of damage in total, 871 of that was at more than 300 meters. He received 15 hits from the enemy, but only 8 of those penetrated and 6 non-penetrations, 1 hit by way of splash damage as well. 405 hit points blocked by armor. He damaged 11 of the enemy, killed 5 of them, and did 327 hit points of damage assist. He earned 67,832 credits for the battle, got 8,479 for mission completion, the holiday ops, 76,311 credits altogether. But he did use a lot of premium ammo, a lot of APCR, and as a result he actually ended up with a loss of 12,955 credits. But if he'd actually been on a free-to-play account, he would have made even more of a loss. He did get 25 bonds for this being an achievement, 2,038 XP for the battle, ×2 for the first victory, 816 for this being a premium vehicle, and 4,893 experience points altogether. So that was an interesting first engagement with the Pz Kpfw KW1. Let's have a look at the Tanks GG for this. This is the armor profile for the KW1. You can see straight away there's these extra plates. They're 30mm thick. They're actually placed on the most vulnerable area of any KV1. The Germans must have looked at that and said, well, that's wrong. Shouldn't have thin armor where it can easily be penetrated. You can see the upper plate is still only 40mm, but because it's angled, it comes out at 74. The lower plate is 75mm, so it's actually quite strong and comes out at about 86. And it's got this strip of thick armor right where you'd expect to ram the enemy vehicle. And that strip of armor is 100mm thick, coming out about 113. The turret's quite thick as well. You can see they're 110mm on the turret. But they swapped out the mantlets, and it's the mantlet which contains the 75mm gun. You can see straight away it's a different gun to the 76mm you'd normally find on the KV1. There's the cupola. Of course, that's a cupola that's probably taken straight off a Pz Kpfw KW, as was the gun for that matter. And it looks like they've also put a bit of applique armor around where the turret turns, the turret ring, to give it a bit of added protection against enemy fire. Now, I do have the KV1 up, so we can actually compare them. And now you can see between the different pictures, you can see straight away the cupola, the gun, and that applique armor. Well, wrong way. That's better. Yeah, you can see straight away that it is very visible that it's thinning armor on here. If you look at the front of that armor there, 75mm coming at about 79. If I go to the KW1, you can see that the armor is actually a lot thicker, 110mm with the the applique armor on top. So it does make a big difference to the vehicle to have that extra armor on, because it gives you a bit of protection. You can see that strip where the ram strip is basically the same as on the Soviet vehicles. So they've only put the armor on here, armor around the turret ring, the cupola, and changed the gun. The gun is only a 76mm here, which is not very effective. But let's have a look at the comparison for the figures. Well, okay, we can see the base tank being the Pz KW1, the captured one. And you can see instantly that the KV1 is worse when it comes to penetration at 500mm. It also does about the same on DPM. The damage is about the same. Module damage is slightly better for the KV1, the Russian one, because of course it's got a slightly higher caliber. It's only 76mm, but 1mm isn't much extra. But you can see here another big thing is the shell velocity. The German shell velocity is actually quite a bit higher, 790 as opposed to 680, and that does make a difference. The ammo capacity as well, you can see that the Russian one is 135 rounds, whereas the German's 105. And so the potential damage for the German is actually less than the Soviet version. But that's the actual specifications for the gun itself. And you can see that it's got a worse fire rate, the Russian, worse reload time, and worse penetration than the German. So the German's going to beat it when it comes to actually getting the damage into the enemy and keeping that firepower up over time. Other than that, you can see on the gun handling, it's worse than the German. The mobility is slightly better, but I think that might be down to the actual weight of the vehicle as well. I'll just have to look at that. I think it might be in the armor and health. Yeah, so the German's got slightly more health, 850 millimeters, 850 hit points rather. It's not showing the weight of the vehicle. He's not there, not as far as I can see. There's the weight, yes. The German's slightly heavier. It's got slightly more armor. So the Russian one's worse off because it doesn't have as much armor, but it does have better horsepower. They bumped the horsepower up for the KV1. But that extra weight does make a difference if you're ramming an enemy tank, because this is, after all, a heavy tank, and that's what it does. It rams enemy tanks out of existence. So you're much better off in the German than you are in the standard Soviet. So there you are. That's the German Pz Kpfw KW1. So thanks very much to bublus for sending in this replay. We get to experience it and see what this tank's all about. I think it's a case of finding a hold down position where you can beat the Russian tank on your gun depression and just hammering the hell out of it by firing rounds into it as fast as possible and not letting him get a chance to fire any back. But it will have some of the drawbacks, of course, of German tanks in having that cupola, because that cupola is a weak spot. I forgot to mention that. I didn't actually show you the live model. Yes, you can see that up against a standard, well, that's the 75mm, but you can see the danger here is that you're up against a tank that will actually be able to penetrate a cupola, and they might be able to, I don't think they'll actually get through the turret. They'll certainly get through the sides of the vehicle. I think that cupola is still the weak spot on this particular tank, as opposed to the one on the, we show the one on the KV1. Yes, the turret's actually quite strong against the 76mm, but it's got that weak spot along the viewports. So again, the German has the cupola, this one has the drive ports. So either way, they've both got a weak spot. You just got to aim for it. So I hope you enjoyed that replay. If you did, please give this video a like. Do subscribe to our channel. Leave a little comment down below because it feeds the algorithm. And thank you for watching.